Fauzia.
Fauzia is joined.
Yeah.
Just
Just 1 sec more. If I
Okay.
But I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay. I'll just do it here. I'll just do it here because I seem to be all right. उसे खुला छोड़ दो.
That is great.
I'm ready.
Yeah, great. Hi, hello. You can start now.
Okay. Hello. Welcome to the
recording in progress.
Welcome to the second Zoominar on the theme of language, society, and education, hosted by Universitas Negeri Jakarta. This is part of an ongoing program which we're hoping to organize, and this is the second in the series. For international participants, if you don't know much about Jakarta, Jakarta is one of the great mega cities of Asia, with a population of approaching 30 million in Greater Jakarta. And I calculate that 30 million people is more than the population of Denmark, plus Northern Ireland. So you could take the population of all those countries, have some room for you in Indonesia. And 2 days ago, we heard from UNESCO that Jakarta has been declared to be one of the world's cities of literature, one of 50 cities in the world which has been given this honor. Before I introduce the speaker, I'd like to invite our director of the graduate school, Professor Dr. Dedi Purwana, to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Hawal. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Professor Kamarudin. Thank you for joining this Zoominar, Pak Rector. The Honorable Speaker, Mrs. Fauzia Samim, PhD, from Karachi, Pakistan. She is a lecturer of Ziauddin University, who can share with us for her recent finding research in terms of the impact of pandemic COVID-19 towards the way students communicate and the way students behave during the pandemic. And also from Arita as Vice Director for International Collaboration, Quality Assurance, and also Student Affairs. Pak Faisal, our lecturer, and also all participants who joined the second International Zoominar conducted by postgraduate of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. I am very glad to have Fauzia Samim here to share her finding research in terms of the impact of pandemic COVID-19 towards the behavior of student university in learning and also, of course, in teaching. So I hope this second international Zoominar will benefit for us, and then we will discuss with the speaker in terms of how pandemic COVID-19 impact in our teaching and learning style in the context of Indonesia and compared to Pakistan context. So I hope you can enjoy this Zoom seminar, and don't forget to attend the third seminar in December. In this occasion, I would like to invite Pak Rector to open officially for the second Zoominar this afternoon. Please, Pak Rektor.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
The honorable speakers of the Zoominar program, Ms. Fauzia Samim, PhD TESOL, Mr. Highwell Coleman, the moderator, Professor Dedi Purwana, the Director of Postgraduate Program, and the Board of Vice Director, lecturers, and all students of Postgraduate Program. I am pleased to welcome you all at this monthly Zoominar program with a topic, Effects of Digital Multimodal Communication on Language Norms, Comprehension, and Use. I believe this topic is very challenging for at least two reasons. First, is the driving force of pandemic COVID-19, in which it has affected almost 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries worldwide. Closures of school and other learning space are other impact of such a pandemic. It has impacts 94% of the world's student population, with up to 99% from low and lower middle income countries. Second is the rapid globalization increase through international trades, transportation, and the omnipresent transfer and sharing of information. Features of the increased globalization is known as the era of Industrial Revolution 4.0, the era of technology disruption, and era of society 5.0, called the smart society. These two factors have significantly made this Zoominar program, which discuss about digital multimodal communication, very important and essential. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition, the speaker of today, Zoominar, is another factor to make this event meaningful and beneficial. The Zildjian University, where Dr. Fauzia Samim delivered her service, is one of the top universities in Pakistan with its strength in medical category. I think it is fortunate that UNJ postgraduate program get this access for the Zoominar of today. In this line, I would like to extend my best regards to the rector of Zildjian University, hoping one day we can communicate to set up time for collaboration. This is essential for UNJ is planning to open a faculty of medicine in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, especially lecturers and students of postgraduate program, please enjoy this event. I'm very sure you can take benefit from it to respond to the rapid global changes as described above. Before I end up my speech, I must extend my gratitude to the Director of Postgraduate Program and the Board of Vice Director, and also all the coordinator of the study program who have made this event possible. As required to open this Zoominar, with your permission, I declare this Zoominar officially open. Thank you.
Thank you, Rector. I'd just like to say a few words to introduce our speaker. You've already heard something from Pat Rector. Professor Fauzia Shamim is the Dean of the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences in her university in Karachi, Ziauddin University. She was formerly at the University of Karachi. Fauzia and I have known each other for a very, very long time, about 30 years, I think, at least 30 years. And Fauzia and Pat Faisal and I have a connection through the University of Leeds. Pat Faisal did his master's degree at Leeds. Fauzia did her PhD degree at Leeds. And I have, as you know, I have a connection with Leeds. Fauzia's been extremely deeply involved in teachers' associations, especially SPELT, the Society of Pakistan English Language Teachers, which is an amazing organization. I've known them for the same amount of time, and they are incredible, dynamic, organizing all sorts of events all over the country for teachers. And they have a famous annual conference which moves around the country. So one day in one city, and day 2 in another city, and day 3 in another city. At least before COVID came, then they were able to do that. And their annual conference was last weekend, and I was able to join some of the sessions. Fauzia's interests include learning and teaching in difficult circumstances, an interest which I share, and language policy, questioning the role of English in education systems. So I think that's enough from me. And before I ask Fauzia to begin, can I remind you, please, to switch off your microphones and switch off your camera, so that communication becomes easier. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll select the questions at the end. And we're supposed to have just 1 hour, but I think since we've started a little bit late, I hope we can end a little bit late as well. Okay, at last, Fauzia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Respected Rector and the senior leadership of the university, I'd like to begin by thanking you and, of course, my guru, Professor Howell Coleman, for inviting me today. It's such a great opportunity to be able to talk to you, to be able to connect with you. And thank you so much for the kind offer of collaboration. I will definitely take it back to my rector. And I do hope that this is not the first time we are meeting, that we will continue to have these meetings again. So thank you very much. I'm going to start straight with my presentation now. And I do hope that someone will tell me after about 30 minutes so that I can wrap up in the next 5 minutes. I'll start screen sharing. So if I've got the screen sharing right, yes, I do. I can start that. Okay, and if I can just, all right. I'll be talking about a research study that's actually very much in progress at the moment, but I think this is an opportunity for me to share the preliminary findings. The impact of multimodal digital media communication on Generation Z's language norms, conventions, and use. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge Mohammad Naeem Riaz, who is the academic English instructor and has been my co-researcher and in this study. And I think he's here today also, he's joined. I'm just going to, I understand from Howell that most of the people today would be, or their target audience is the research, postgraduate research students. So I do apologize to the other faculty, senior faculty, if I seem to be doing a bit of a basic sometimes work. But that was because I thought that, I'd like to share or more details than would be necessary for the senior faculty, because I thought I'd like to share the details of the whole process with the students. This is my outline. So this is a typical outline of a research study, synopsis, proposal, thesis. Begin with the background, share the literature, theoretical framework, purpose of the study design, methodology, ethics, very important, data analysis. And as I said, it's very much in progress. So this will be preliminary findings for you. So what is the background of the study? As we all know, that there's been such a great increase in multimodal communication, which is mediated through digital media, particularly during the pandemic, when we could not meet in a physical setting. This trend has been facilitated all the way through various digital media platforms and apps, which we are all familiar with and which we use, I'm sure all of us use all the time, like WhatsApp and YouTube and so on. And what I have observed as a teacher and as a language teacher and as somebody who's interested in linguistics and languages, that this particular trend of using entirely digital media during the pandemic has actually had some very clear or some very visible impacts on the norms and conventions of language and its use. And also, interestingly, literacy practices. And I'll tell you a little bit, I'll share a little bit more about you from where these observations come and invite you to be part of those observations in a while. Also, I think in 2005, as early as that, Bryan Street and the New London School, they were telling us about the new literacy studies and that how the new literacies needed to be and are different from print literacy only. And they include other modes like images, color, graphics, and designs, and so on. The purpose of the study is to identify the impact of multimodal digital media communication on language and its use by Generation Z, because these are the people who are actually born with the technology. And of course, we also want to see how, if and how it has impacted literacy practices. Just to take you all the way back to 1978 with Michael Halliday's book, a very, very groundbreaking piece of work, which is when he presented the theory of social semiotics. And the focus was on meaning-making process. How do we arrive at any meaning? And what he identified for us and what he said we drew our attention to is that individuals are located with a certain sociocultural background and environment. So in meaning making, they use all those resources, their cultural resources, the social resources. So meaning making is not simply the words on the page, but it is much more, and it is all nested within the sociocultural context. In 1996 came another seminal work, Reading Images, the Grammar of Visual Design. I'll actually be taking you through a few what I consider milestones in this theory development by sharing a few major works with you as part of the literature background. So Reading Images, the Grammar of Visual Design by Kress and Leuven, 1996. It has just recently been republished in 2021. This laid the foundation of what came to be known as the theory of social semiotics and multimodality. And it was completely renouncing the concept of linear reading as we are used to in all our traditional readings, start from the beginning, follow it in a very linear manner. And this was actually challenging it. 2001, the next milestone, multimodal discourse, the modes and media of contemporary communication. Remember, the word contemporary here refers to 2001, which is 20 years ago. So that's 2 decades ago. And this contemporary has changed its meaning in today, in 2021. So at this point also, I think they recognize the shift from monomodality to multimodality, not one mode, but multiple modes. And this was in the wake of what they called emerging digitization, because with digitization of resources, multimodal resources are available. And in one sociocultural setting, they qualify the meaning of making at all levels in any mode, and they could change from in another different setting. So these are multimodal resources that are available to all of us for meaning making. 2010, Multimodality, a social semiotic approach to contemporary communication, where Kress defined multimodality as the normal state of human communication. So there's nothing which is extraordinary about it. Multimodality in 2010 seems to be normal, just as now we talk about the normal and the new normal. So after 2001, 9 years from then, it became the normal state, particularly because of globalization and where more importance lies with image, the text, and then the text itself and describing anything. So the value of images in our communication. 2016, multimodality learning and communication. So here, the concept of social semiotic theory for multimodal communication was presented to convince, and I think the authors were convinced that present-day learning is also multimodal, where modes are taking shape in combinations such as image, writing and design, gesture, posture, speech. So even learning is multimodal. It's no more just a linear one. Let me share with you a couple of, as I said, I'll take you through my observations and invite you to look at a couple of pieces with me. This is the announcement or an invitation for an event that only happened yesterday, 10th November. And I had sent this out to some people, so this was the poster competition, Youth Voices to Save the Planet. This is in the traditional mode of what we call the print, linear, starting at the top, moving on, coming down to the bottom and so on. However, it was also accompanied with a poster. And I'll share the poster with you. This was the poster. Now the poster had several things which I could not put in there, though I had said collaboration with so-and-so. Here you can see that all the different collaboration, the logos are at the top. So we all know from the way we read that logos means collaboration, just as in there is the poster sent out for today's talk. I was glad to see that Ziauddin's logo was at the top as a collaborator. So we know how to read these. But then we've got images, we've got different kinds of text. In fact, this has more text than the invitation that I'd sent out, because it's also got guidelines, it's got eligibility, judgmental criteria, it's also got dates and stuff, it's got contact details. So it's got a lot more information, but it's all on one page. And this is what is called the multimodal communication. And the digital media has actually facilitated this because this is a digital poster. If you put the two together here, I don't have time, but I'm going to just invite you to think about, these are the two, there are different modes that we are using over here. In one, this is a multimodal poster, and in the other one, it is just what we call the traditional print. When I showed it to my students and I said, which one will you look at first and where do you think you can get the information? Everybody invariably said the poster. In fact, when I just sent out the invite to some people, some of my friends, and the poster wasn't ready, they wrote back and said, where is the poster? So it is interesting that people are actually looking for multimodal. And only this morning, I received once again an invite for something. And all it said was there was no text in the email. It just said, see attached, and the attached was a poster. So that seems to be, as it was said, that's a normal way of communication now. And that's what people expect. So if you don't send them a poster and you just send them the text, they say, where is the poster? These were the research. So that's a sort of very quick whiz through the theoretical background. The research questions, I've got 3 in red, which are the ones that we are going to address today. The 4th one requires more research, and that's still in progress. So I'll give you 10 seconds, 20 seconds to quickly look at the questions. So basically, we are interested in finding out why students use certain digital media platforms, for what purposes, what kinds of messages, how do they impact the linguistic content and presentation of the message. So if they use one multimedia, application rather than another one? What's the difference? And what are the perceptions about how these have affected their literacy practices, their reading of text or messages, and their writing of text or drafting of messages. The study design is what we call a sequential mixed methods design, where there's a quantitative survey followed by qualitative interviews. So today I'm only going to share with you the findings of the quantitative survey, and the qualitative interviews, as I said, are still in progress. The data collection, 2 phases because it's sequential. The first phase is online survey, which has been done using a Google form. The second phase is a follow-up qualitative semi-structured interviews from these respondents to the survey or the survey respondents. The ethical considerations, as we all know, all universities have ethical review committees. So it had to go through the ethical review committee. And particularly at this point, I don't have the time to share it, but the informed consent form for interviews is looked at very carefully, because that is a one-on-one interview, semi-structured interviews. And these are kind of in-depth probing about the behavior patterns and the perceptions and the experiences of students regarding use of multimodal communication and its effect on their own behavior patterns and literacy practices. The data analysis and presentation, there's online survey, descriptive statistics, tables, charts, frequency counts, percentages, etc. And in the interview data, we'll be doing a thematic analysis, which will include direct verbatim quotes from participants so that their voices can also be heard along with our own analysis. These are the preliminary findings of the online survey that I'm going to share with you. But before I share those findings, I'd like to invite you to do a short task so that when I share the findings with you, you might be able to compare your own perceptions, experience of doing this very, very brief task and see whether you can identify with the findings or not. So here is the task. Here is a poster for you, which is multimodal communication. And the task is, look at the image, then write in the chat box 3 things. What's the message? How is the message communicated? And as I said, this is a multimodal text, so that's what you need to think about. And how did you read it? Did you read it in a linear fashion, or did you read it in any other way? So I think we could just take probably 1 minute for you to do this in the chat box. So fasten seatbelts for young children. That's the message Howell says. And somebody says, I looked at the image first, then worked downwards. Another message that somebody read is, safety is very important. Safety first. And a couple of more responses about how you read this. What did you focus on first? Did you start from the left, right, line by line, go down? SOPs to save the children in the car. Numbers 1, 2, 3. So Edward read started reading numbers 1, 2, 3, and they seem to be giving the information in a sequence. Diva read the white text. And Suharthi read, enjoy the trip, but don't forget your safety. So that seems to be the message. So the messages are probably 1 or 2 more, and then we can move on. Procedural steps taken for safety. So the procedures, 1, 2, 3 is your schema for procedures. They go down 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So you're reading the message and you're reading it, that the message is depending on where you're focusing on and what your socio-cultural background and the environment in which you are is, I think, it affects the kind of message that you're getting from here. This is from, I think this poster is from the UK or the North America, where children cannot sit in the cars unless they have securely fastened seat belts for them. In Pakistan, it's very different. So when I showed it to my students, they were like, oh, he's enjoying himself. The kid is enjoying himself because there's no concept of kids having seat belts or making sure that they are safe because of seat belts. Anyways, so let me move on now to sharing the findings of the survey and keep this in mind while I share the findings. This is a brief profile of the participants. This is the survey is currently based on 2007 responses. 97.6% are undergrad students, so they are the ones who belong to Generation Z. Even the postgrad students are between the same profile. These are different faculties and programs from which they come: health sciences, liberal arts, faculty of law. And we did a couple of universities, which the data is still coming from the other universities, University of Karachi and Habib University and Sindh University. The age, as I said, 54.1 belong to 21 to 24, 43.5, 17 to 20. So these are the youngsters who have actually used digital resources for everything, at least during the pandemic, and also, I'm sure, even before, because these are what we call the digital natives, or the generation that has actually grown up with technology. So this was a question that asked them, how frequently do you use the following? And they were given certain Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, and others. And we can see that they always use WhatsApp. So you can see this going up right at the top. They use Instagram quite a lot. And then we've got YouTube, followed by Snapchat, followed by Facebook. And the others are really, really very small. We were glad to hear that, because when we piloted it, the students, the same generation, the generation that was going to answer it, they were happy with these. And in fact, I think we didn't have Snapchat there. So they said, please add that, because we use that also. So they seem to be using these apps and WhatsApp more often than the others. The second question was about the purpose. Why do you use it? And most of them use it to communicate use Instagram to communicate with friends. They use WhatsApp to communicate with friends. And they use Snapchat to communicate with friends. And they don't use Twitter too much. They don't use YouTube to communicate with friends. Please remember that the purpose is here, communicate with friends. And they hardly use Snapchat to communicate. They use Snapchat quite a lot. In fact, quite a lot. WhatsApp and this, and then Instagram. And then we asked them if they actually considered language when they were actually communicating their messages. And it was interesting to note that 47.8% that said they always consider the language that they use. And 29.5% said they often think about it. So that seemed to show that the majority of them are actually quite aware of the language that they are using when they are communicating through digital media. And then the next question was, do you consider the format of your message? And once again, the majority of them said 28.5 always, 34.3 some often, 26.6 sometimes, but they did seem to be, I think, also focusing on the format of the message. So what is the font? Is it the left aligned, right aligned? Do you use different kinds of fonts, different font sizes, etc., etc.? Do you carefully consider the images you use? And once again, yes, overwhelmingly, 45.4%, yes, always. 23.7%, often. So once again, they seem to be very aware that an image carries a message and it adds to the meaning of the message. So they were quite careful about using it according to who the audience was. The use of social media platforms has changed my writing style. Agree, 44.4%. And neutral is 28%. Only 9.2% disagreed. So once again, mainly they seem to be aware of the impact it's having on their writing style or drafting of messages. And then also on the reading of messages and the way they process information. 55.6% agreed that it has changed the way they process information, they read information. So are they reading the text in a linear fashion, or are their eyes jumping all over the place? And when I did the same poster with my students over here, they said, we were focusing on from the image to the text, up and down, all over the place, but there was no linearity in our reading. And then the 11.6% strongly agreed to this, that they actually have changed their reading style. The summary of findings I'm going to share with you very quickly. The frequency of use, one is most frequent. WhatsApp, most frequently used, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook, as we go down. But mainly WhatsApp and Instagram, as we noted there in the tables. Communicating with friends, students' use of apps. So which one do you think they use the most to communicate with friends? Could you write in your chat box, please? Just by looking at these images. Okay. Okay. All right. And how do you know? That's my next question. So can you just tell me, how did you figure that out? That WhatsApp is used the most. How did you figure that out? From the symbol? Yeah, but we've got all the symbols. We've got 6 symbols over here. The biggest symbol, yes, Sarita, you're absolutely right. The biggest symbol. So it's not saying anything in so many words, but it's actually, and you can see the order. These, so which one is the, which particular 2 apps are the least used for communicating with friends? Can you put that in your chat box, please? Which 2 apps are the least used for communicating with friends? According to this, the way the data is presented over here. YouTube, yes, and Twitter. Okay. Yes, Howell, all your answers are correct. Okay, thank you. So you see, this is the way that my students would read a lot easier, and they would remember this kind of information a lot more than the one that I presented in this fashion. Even if I had put in front of them, say 50%, 60%, 70%, this is the kind of information they would remember. And they would, because they know the figures, they know the images, and they can react to the size and so on, and one's at the bottom, one's at the top. They use this is a very, very interesting thing. What is the major difference in their use of WhatsApp for communication and WhatsApp for entertainment? Could you please put that in the chat box? Sorry. What is the major difference in the use of WhatsApp for communication and for entertainment? So, okay, I think there's not enough time. So I'll just go back and remind you, for communication, WhatsApp was the most, was used always, right? For entertainment, it is the least used of the apps. So they're using these apps, but they're using them for different purposes. And they're very aware of why they're using a particular app and what is the major purpose of using that app. So they seem to be very aware people, you know, as I said, almost like digital natives, because they understand what is the difference in different apps, you know, what are the kinds of functions that a different apps have, and how do they use those functions? So they're very aware of it. And in fact, when I said, oh, I was saying to my students, I use Facebook for entertainment, and they just kind of looked down and they said, yeah, the old generation does use it for entertainment. So I'm the old generation. For me, Facebook is at the top for entertainment. And they were like, yeah, okay, we're your age, it's fine. So it also seems to be this intergenerational differences in the use of these apps. The different modes of communication, quick summary, language use, 77% consider it when they are formatting their text. 62% consider the format, 69% consider the images when they're formatting, when they're writing the text. And that tells us a lot about how aware they are of language and what kind of language they're using. And interestingly, I was reading the other day an article which was talking about the use of translanguaging in WhatsApp messages and how it has impacted how the use of language, and sometimes it also slips into the formal essays because they're so used to doing it on WhatsApp. The students' perceptions of writing styles, yes, it has changed their writing style. 67% think that, and 77% think that it has changed their reading and processing of information. Now, this has a lot of implications for how we teach students and how we expect them to learn. Because if we use the traditional styles of teaching and learning, when their reading and writing styles have changed due to the environment, due to the technology, due to their use of technology, then I don't think that too much learning will take place. So I think that as teachers, we need to be very conscious of these changes that are happening in behavior patterns, in learning patterns of the students. These were preliminary findings. And what are the next steps now? We'll be doing qualitative individual interviews. And surprisingly, 87% of these students agreed for a follow-up interview, because we had asked that question in the survey and asked them to share their email address if they felt, because it sounds like they want to talk about it. They're interested in sharing how they feel, what they are doing. And generally in these surveys, when you ask for follow-up interviews, less than 10% say yes, because they know it takes time and it's going to, but it sounds like they are really interested in talking about it. So I was hoping that earlier on, we were only thinking of individual interviews, but when I saw this 87% response, we felt that we could probably also bring in some focus groups where we could do those for not individual classes, but for different faculties, and invite people to come there so that we might get some more information. These are the references that I have used and I've just talked about in my talk. And thank you very much. So I'd be happy to hear your comments and to take your questions now. I think I will have taken my 35 minutes. Yes, that's what I promised.
Yes, exactly on time. Thanks very much, Fawzia. This is absolutely fascinating and has made me think about a lot of things I hadn't thought about before. So far, I can't see any questions in the chat box. So can I begin with asking you a couple of questions?
Right.
I'll
stop share here so that, yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. One of your early questions to the respondents was about whether they consider the language, always consider the language.
Yeah.
How do you think they interpreted that question? Because to me, it has various possible interpretations, like which language did you use? Do you decide, would you choose which language to use?
You see, how it could be all. It could be code selection. So which language you use in terms of you use your local language, English, you use, if you know more than one languages, which one we use, depending on the formality of the text, depending on the audience. So this is, I totally agree with you. This is a very broad question. And I'm hoping that in the qualitative interviews, we should be able to get some more responses and the details. We did not want to put any of those details in the survey questions because really we weren't interested in saying, so do you use one code or the other? Do you think about code selection? Do you think about X, Y, and Z? All we wanted to know was that, is this a trend? We as teachers observe that this is a trend. And is that something that is actually the case? And it sounds like, yes, it is the case. And our assumption that it has made a change, because you see, I can always feel it when I'm changing, when I'm sharing things in my class, when I'm teaching and the students ask me questions, they're always asking for visual information. They're always asking for, don't you have a PowerPoint to share with us? When I'm using images or a video, I see a lot more happiness and understanding and discussion going on than if it is simply just text. So you're right. It's a broad question, but I think intentionally broad.
Yeah, I see. So it's a starting point for in-depth discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. I still can't see any questions from anybody. In which case, I'll ask you another question.
So either my talk was too clear or it put everybody to sleep. I don't know which one.
No, I think people are amazed.
We have a question from the rector.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah, in the chat box. So could you read that out, Rahul? Because my chat box is gone.
I haven't seen it.
I just saw two questions in the chat box.
Oh, yeah, from Pat Rector. What is your opinion about the way that Generation Z communicating using this multimodality, for example, symbols, compared to the caveman's communication in prehistoric time? It's a very good question.
Sorry, Pavel. It is the secretary of rector who is speaking. Pak Rector is out of the room. This is Susino speaking. Okay. The secretary. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You see, in this question, talking about the prehistoric times and so on, it's almost like when we started comparing email and snail mail. So we were talking about, and now when nobody, I mean, the young generation, I don't think they've ever sent, I see my son who's a teenager, the same generation, I don't think he's sent a letter for years. Yesterday, I was asking him something and he said, I haven't printed anything for the last 3 years. And I said, what? I try to, that's still my way of, if I want to keep something and I know it's on the cloud and I know it's on XYZ digital apps, but I still feel very secure if I print it and put it in a file and keep it next to me. And he laughed it away and he said, why are you wasting paper? So it seems like there are different ways in which things have changed. I mean, we are, but also this is probably inevitable. I mean, in Pakistan, this was slow. The digital media use was only in few people who belong to the upper class, who were traveling, who were, sort of the global citizens and so on. But now it seems to be everyone, because the pandemic has pushed it forward by at least 3 decades, if not more, in a country like Pakistan. I don't know about Indonesia. Would somebody like to tell me something about Indonesia? How has this, what I call almost like the Industrial Revolution? This is the digital revolution. So how has it affected Indonesia and the students there?
Would anybody like to answer Fauzia's question? No comments coming up. There's another question from Caroline Tag. I think it's interesting that WhatsApp is used more with family than any other apps are, which points to intergenerational differences which you mentioned. I don't know if you have any insights into this.
I mean, I do know that I've got nieces and nephews who are like, freshman students and so on. We have a very good understanding. We talk about things, they share stuff with me, but they've never talked to me on Instagram because perhaps they know that I don't follow it. I don't constantly use it. So yes, there seem to be intergenerational differences there. And I think we need to be cognizant of that, particularly because if I, as a teacher, am of a different generation, and I continue to follow the practices that worked for my generation, I think it is going to be it's not going to be very helpful for the new generation that looks at the thing differently, that works differently. So I think if I gave them a project now, I might want to do an Instagram story, which means that I have to learn it first myself, but that's a different thing.
I think in Indonesia, there are youngers now using the Instagram more.
There are younger people using it more, you said, yeah?
Yeah, Instagram.
But you see, with the pandemic, we were, the older generation was also pushed into using these because we had to communicate with our students. I mean, if I was teaching online, I had to communicate with my students, and I had to communicate using the means that they were very comfortable with. And WhatsApp groups seem to be very common now. Everything that we do, we quickly make a WhatsApp group for that, whether it's an event or whether even if it's going out for dinner. Instead of calling 10 different people and spending time there, you just make a WhatsApp group and everybody sort of says yes and no, and then you delete the group. So this has become a very efficient way, even for my generation.
There's a comment and question from Ibu Arita, Professor Arita. There's a big difference between the way of communicating between Generation Z and baby boomers, such as lecturers and new students. In your opinion, how can effective communication be built between the two? This is related to what you've just been saying.
Yeah. Just to reiterate the same point, probably, I feel that because sometimes when students we say to them, put away your mobiles, you can get distracted by your mobiles. I've started using the mobiles a lot in my classroom now, because anything that they can't find, or I just put some information there and I say, come on, quickly, who can tell me first? And they're very smart. They hardly take 10 seconds to get the information. This morning, I was teaching a phonology class, and in the phonology class, the pronunciation is always an issue. So wherever we disagreed in the transcription, everybody go to your mobile, check it out. Oh, this is the American one. This is the British one. All right, so what do we have? Do we have the Pakistani one here? So it created interest, it created discussion. Also, it is giving them a lifelong learning tool, because I'm not going to be in the class telling them how to pronounce words all their life. So they know that if they come across a word that they don't know how to pronounce, all they need to do is take 2 seconds, go to the dictionary, listen to the pronunciation, decide which one they want, Pakistani, English, British or American, and then go ahead. And there's also, they can record themselves right there. They can listen to themselves right there. They can improve their pronunciations. So those are the teaching strategies that I have started at least using in my class as far as possible. And my learners seem to enjoy that a lot. So they're saying, okay, I mean, you have to still stop them. Don't use the mobile for other things. But when we are doing some creative writing, take out your mobile, choose a picture from a recent event in your life that you don't mind sharing with all of us. Write about it. Answer the 5 questions: what, where, how, when, and then tell us about it. We ask each other questions, listening, reading, writing. No material required. And one thing I'd just like to share also, about a few years ago before the pandemic, about I think 4 or 5 years ago, I was teaching at that point in Saudi Arabia. When I came back to Pakistan, I wasn't really sure how far the country has moved in the 7 years that I was away. So the first day I came to class, I said, all right, so we'll have to photocopy some handouts. And they all looked at me like, what? Photocopy? Who photocopies handouts these days? And the CR stood up and said, ma'am, where is your handout? So I gave it to her. She clicked, took pictures, and then in the next 10 seconds said, can you guys check everybody's got the handouts? Yes, everybody's got the handouts. So that was amazing. And that was interesting because it saved me time, money, effort, and everybody could take out their mobile and look at the handout and work on it. So these are some ways in which I'm learning from my students what to do.
Yeah, amazing. There's a question from Edward Saputra. The trend right now, most people use Telegram to communicate and TikTok for entertaining. Is it the same in Pakistan?
Interestingly, TikTok is something which is used a lot by even people who are not highly educated and who are not in universities. And this survey was based on basically university students, because that's what I was interested in terms of teaching and learning. The other problem, so TikTok is used as a way of entertainment by the masses, let me put it that way. But there's also a problem that every few months, there's a ban on TikTok by the government, because they're not happy with the kind of material posted there, or there's some people are, some people, young people have died because they're trying to take the TikTok videos without thinking about their own safety and so on. And so it's not a consistent use of TikTok in that sense. And Telegram, I don't think Telegram is popular here. I know that some people use it, particularly for sending big files and stuff, and making big groups, which WhatsApp doesn't allow, but not common with these kinds of tunes, who wouldn't be dealing with more than 100 people in a group or something. They only have groups of 5, 7 friends groups.
Faisal, you have a question.
Yeah.
What is your understanding about your the skill of your teachers using the IT?
You see, this is a very interesting question, because I'm also looking after the language center over here, and the recent hirings that I did, I consciously put in there early career professionals only. Now that goes against saying, okay, so where is experience? Why wasn't I hiring people with experience? And I said only 1 to 2 years experience required, because I wanted them to be already tech savvy when they came here, rather than it is easier to work with people who are already tech savvy and to communicate with them in terms of, or to help them, facilitate them for their own professional development through all the webinars that are going on these days, and all the free conferences and all the free resources that are available. You just send them the link and they run with it. So I felt that the teachers, and once again, I'm not going against I don't want to make myself redundant by any chance. So I do want us to keep learning with them. But in terms of, and they seem to have an immediate connect with their students in terms of the technology use. So even if they're not such good teachers in the terms of traditional good teachers, I think the rapport that they can create with the learners because of technology use is amazing. So yes, in the language center, I've got almost Generation Z teachers also, young, fresh graduates.
Okay, from Agung Purwanto, you have a question. Agung? Well, the question is, in your opinion, how is the awareness of Generation Z about speaking with correct grammatical rules?
Sorry, Howell, can you read the question again?
Again, my interpretation is, how aware are Generation Z about speaking with correct grammatical rules?
Oh, okay. The word correct, I think, is kind of out of their dictionaries, because what they're thinking more about is communication of the messages. And it is only, I think, sometimes we as teachers who are very worried about the grammatical correctness. All they're interested in is, has the message been communicated? Now that sounds fine in spoken English, because I think that because there's so many other aids, you know, you've got the body language, you've got the gestures, you've got everything else. But I have a problem, because when they transfer the same habits to their writing, then I really have to sit down with them and say, guys, that was okay for spoken interaction, and I did not stop you, and I don't want to stop you and keep correcting your grammar. But when you are writing, this is more formal style. You have to follow some rules, and you have to make an argument. You have to have some more sequencing words and so on and so forth. And they say, oh, but you can understand. And I said, yes, I may be able to understand because I know you, but the more effort I put in understanding you, the more marks I give to myself. So don't do that again. It works.
Okay, there's a question from Nurmulan. Maaf, ini Bapak itu Ibu. Nurmulan Kusuma. Please be kind to give us some advice about how to manage the class that lack communication skills. They know that English communication is very important for their careers in the future. Still, they don't find the best way to make it better, to make their English better. This is a more general question.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, it's such a big question that it probably needs another webinar specifically on this topic. Well, generally what I would say is that if they're interested in improving the communication skills, I feel that the best service we can do to them as teachers is to make them lifelong learners, is to help them, to facilitate them, find the resources that they can continue using even after they leave the classroom. Because if they just focus on the classroom and the little bit of information or the practice that they get in the classroom, they really won't get too far. So for example, when I play the videos in the classroom, I say to them, you know that you've got the script and it's possible for you to use that. So the first time, if you don't understand, try and first listen to it and watch the video without, without the text. If you can't understand it, the second time you use the text. The third time, take it out again and see if you can still go back and listen to it again. Now that's a skill that they can use not only for learning of English, but for watching any films that they find on Netflix or anywhere else. So, I mean, it goes from the classroom out to the real world, these kinds of skill development that you can help them to continue practicing their communication skills.
Okay. I can't see any more questions. I just got another thought myself, which relates to the comment you made before the last one. For the distant future, can you see any implications for academic writing? I mean, published academic writing. I've noticed in communications that I get from my bank, for example, or if I'm doing something online with my bank account, I can't assume linearity any longer. If I fill up a form, sometimes I have to go up to press the send. I can't assume that send will be at the bottom. So I have to read this form or fill it up in a different way from what used to happen. Are there any implications for academic writing, do you think?
You see, once again, Howell, what I think one can do, and I was teaching the business communication students at one point, I would actually use emails directly from their own experience. And so I would ask them to say, bring some emails that come from, for example, brand publicity, another email that brings in information. And then we would look at the language in terms of, so just, I suppose what we can do in terms of academic writing is to make them aware of this. But you're very right, Howell. We cannot assume that there's only one pattern in terms of how you read things anymore. And the more ways you know how to do it, the quicker and more efficient you are in processing information.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Fauzia. It's a fascinating talk, and it certainly made me think about lots of things. I have to be more tolerant of modes of communication that I sometimes find rather irritating. So that's had a positive impact on me. I'd just like to say a little bit about our next session, which will be on Thursday, the 9th of December, where Tony Capstick from Reading University will be talking about language migration. Tony has done a lot of innovative work in this field, and he's written a very important book on this subject. For semester 2, we plan to have 5 sessions each month from February to June, and we already have 3 confirmed speakers. Subhan Zain from Australian National University, an Indonesian who's teaching in Australia. Kathleen Hugh from Adelaide University of South Australia, and Obaid Hamid from the University of Queensland, all from Australia. And 2 more slots have still to be filled in. A couple of questions have been, are we able to share your PowerPoint with the participants? Would you be happy about that, Rosia?
I wouldn't have a problem, but just with this caveat that this is still work in progress. So it cannot be quoted because it's still work in progress.
Okay, so can't be quoted. Okay, thanks very much indeed, Rosia. Really stimulating session. And thank you to everybody who's participated. More than 100 people I see have been participating. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Howell, and thank you very much, everyone else, for listening.
It's
been a pleasure.
Howell,
yeah.
before you close that, is there any chance that we have taking the photos first? Then before you.
Oh yeah, okay. Photograph.
Photographs, yeah.